Hello, fellow travelers. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Catie, aka the Marginalia Writer, and this is where we talk about books, reading challenges, and the magical worlds we discover between the pages. Today we're diving into Chapter 2 of Once Upon a Year, The Call to Adventure, covering April through June. If you're just joining us or want a refresher on what this readathon is all about, I'll link the full announcement video somewhere up here so you can catch up on the story of the realm and how everything works. And if you're already on this journey with me, welcome back. I'm so glad you're here. Before we dive in, if you enjoy this kind of content, readathons, book challenges, cozy reading vibes, please consider subscribing and hitting that like button. It helps other readers find this community, and sharing this video with anyone you think might be interested means the world. This readathon is all about building a community of readers, and you're a huge part of that. All right, let's step onto the road together. Before we dive into Chapter 2, we need to talk about the transition, the moment when winter ends and spring begins. On the final night of winter, just before the roads begin to soften, a sound echoes through the realm. It starts as a whisper, barely audible, like ice beginning to crack, then it grows, spreading from village to village, a chorus of voices reading aloud in unison. No one knows who starts it or how everyone seems to know the words, but for one brief moment, the entire realm speaks the same line. Once upon a time, the journey began. When the last word fades, the first drop of snowmelt falls. Spring has arrived. Travelers mark this moment by lighting a small candle and setting it in their window, a signal that they are ready to leave the hearth and step onto the road. And that's where we are now. The candles are lit, the ice has cracked, the journey that began by the fire is calling us forward. The earth tilted toward light, seeds were planted, and readers set out. Spring didn't announce itself with certainty. It arrived unevenly, in moments that felt borrowed rather than claimed. Frost still clung to shaded ground. Fires were not yet abandoned, but the light lingered longer, and the air carried the unmistakable promise that the world was shifting again. Travelers noticed the change before they could name it. They had already begun their journeys in winter, already stepped beyond the safety of the hearth and into the story. Now, as the realm softened and color returned to its edges, something else became clear. Standing still was no longer an option. The road had formed beneath their feet, and whether they followed it closely or wandered its margins, it was moving them forward all the same. This was the call to adventure. Not the call that pulls you from your door, but the one that reaches you once you are already on your way. The quiet understanding that the story is no longer asking if you will continue, only how. As spring settled into the realm, the journey began to feel less like a single direction and more like a widening path. Travelers were no longer moving from one clear marker to the next. Instead, the road unfolded beneath them in layers. Side paths appeared and disappeared, old routes curved back into view. What mattered was not choosing one way forward, but allowing curiosity to lead wherever it tugged. The journey was no longer about stepping forward once, it was about learning how to keep moving. So what does that mean for us as readers? As spring settles in, the road takes shape through 5 core quests, stories that mirror the season of growth, renewal, and movement. Stories marked by flowers, leaves, or greenery appeared again and again along the path, scattered like wild growth. These books felt alive in the hands, mirroring the season itself. Growth showed up unevenly, sometimes tangled, sometimes fragile, often beautiful in ways that could not be planned. Travelers learned that progress doesn't need to be orderly to be real. Alongside our travelers came stories of fresh starts, new beginnings, and second chances. These were not about erasing what had already happened, but about continuing anyway. Characters stepped forward, carrying their past with them, reshaping their stories without pretending the earlier chapters did not exist. Our next quests are books that featured plants, garden, or farming elements that rooted the journey in care and patience. These stories honored tending over rushing, returning instead of abandoning, trusting that something nurtured would rise in its own time, even when growth felt invisible. Beyond familiar borders, translated works and stories set in other countries expanded the road outward. Through different languages, customs, and landscapes, travelers discovered that exploration does not require leaving everything behind. Sometimes it simply asks you to look at the world and yourself through a different lens. And woven throughout it all were encounters with new-to-you authors or debut voices, stories without well-worn reputations, pages that ask for trust instead of certainty. These choices reminded travelers that the road stays alive only when curiosity is allowed to lead. Taken together, these paths don't compete with one another. They overlap, they braid, they invite us to wander freely, gathering experiences instead of taking directions off a map. To break this down for you, our 5 core quests for Chapter 2 are: a book with flowers, leaves, or greenery on the cover, a story about a fresh start, new beginnings, or second chances, a book that has plants, garden, or farming elements within the story, a translated work, or a book set in another country, and a new-to-you author or debut novel. As the road widened, not every way forward remained clearly marked. Some paths shimmered into view only briefly, narrow trails through tall grass, turns that felt less like decisions and more like moments of noticing. Travelers found themselves drifting onto these routes without meaning to, following curiosity, circling back, weaving between the main road and the quieter ground. These are our 4 companion quests. Stories whose titles carried the language of growth often appeared along these paths. They felt like pauses rather than destinations, invitations to slow down and pay attention to what was unfolding beneath the surface. Naming something, it turned out, could be a form of care. Other tales followed characters who were already in motion, where the main character begins a journey not with urgency but with commitment. These stories echoed a truth travelers were learning for themselves: that continuing requires its own kind of courage, one that does not rely on novelty. Fresh voices emerged as the season progressed. Books published in the last 90 days arrived like new footprints alongside familiar ones, creating memories of shared discovery, even as travelers moved at different rhythms. And when uncertainty crept in, maps revealed themselves, sometimes clearly drawn, sometimes hinted at through story and structure. Books with a map offered quiet reassurance that wandering still has shape, and that being unsure of direction does not mean being lost. These paths didn't distract from the journey, they deepened it. They reminded travelers that not all magic announces itself loudly, and that some of the most meaningful movement happens just off the main road. To break this down for you simply, our companion quests for Chapter 2 are a book with the word garden, seed, or bloom in the title, a book where the main character begins a journey, a book published in the last 90 days, and a book with a map. Let's jump into our April side stories. April arrived quietly. The ground was soft beneath foot, damp with promise. Buds appeared almost without warning, and the realm seemed to ask its travelers not to hurry past them. Small invitations surfaced in unexpected places. This month, we have 3 side stories. These are creative prompts that invite us to engage with the community and earn tokens. Remember, each side story completed earns you 1 token. The first is spring foraging. Some noticed what they were already tending: a plant stretching toward the window, a new habit taking root, a creative practice returning after a long pause. For this prompt, we ask you to take a photo of something new you're growing this season. It can be a plant, a journal habit, a craft, or anything else that feels like new life. These moments remind us that growth doesn't need to be impressive to be real. Our second side story is the riddle of spring. So playfulness followed close behind. A riddle passed between travelers, lighthearted and fleeting, offering a pause from seriousness and a reason to laugh together. I'll post the riddle in the community on Discord. Can you guess it correctly? Not everything on the road needs to be solved to be meaningful. And our third one is Blossom's Call. As paths crossed, recommendations were shared freely. Through Blossom's Call, stories were offered the way seeds are traded without expectation, simply in the hope that something might take hold where it was needed most. For this prompt, we want you to share a book recommendation for one of this chapter's prompts and help a fellow traveler find their next read. April didn't demand progress, it asked only for attention. I now want to talk about what's coming for May, June, and beyond. As April gives way to May, travelers will begin to notice some changes along the road. Ribbons will appear tied to branches and colors that catch the light. Lanterns will hang from trees, where no trees had lanterns before. And if you stand very still and listen carefully, you'll hear it: music in the wind, laughter echoing from somewhere just beyond the next hill. The Festival of the Open Road is approaching. In May, travelers will pass through 6 festival towns, each with its own character, its own gifts, its own place in the journey. And along those brightening roads, you'll meet Fenric Bloomwhistle, the realm's traveling petal merchant, who believes that beauty is currency more valuable than gold. May's side stories will invite travelers to share music that accompanies their reading, to pair books together like dance partners, and to offer small acts of beauty in return for Fenric's gifts. By June, the road will feel settled into muscle memory. The sky will open wider, light will linger well into the evening. June's side stories will ask travelers to share their stacks of reads, to practice small acts of self-care along the road, and to gather words of inspiration. These are lines and quotes that spark joy and leave lanterns of light along the path. Make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on, because I'll be releasing videos next month with all the details about the Festival of the Open Road, the 6 towns we'll visit, and exactly what Fenric will be asking of us. You won't want to miss those updates. The festival is where things really start to get magical. Before we close, I want to talk about our village read. Every quarter, we come together as a community to read one book, a shared story that connects all of us, no matter where we are on our individual journeys. For Chapter 2, we're looking for books that embody the themes of renewal, discovery, journeys, and transformation. Here are the kinds of books we're hoping you'll suggest: coming-of-age novels, nature writing or eco-fiction, literary fiction about fresh starts or second chances, translated works, magical realism with themes of growth or rebirth. If you have a book that fits these themes, something you think that would bring us together as readers, something that captures the spirit of Chapter 2 and New Beginnings, please submit it. I'll have a link in the description where you can share your suggestions, and we'll vote together on which book becomes our village read for this chapter. This is about creating a shared experience, about all of us walking the same path for a little while, about the magic that happens when a community reads together. I can't wait to see what you suggest. So that's Chapter 2, The Call to Adventure. We've left the hearth behind, we're learning to keep moving, and ahead of us lies the Festival of the Open Road, encounters with new companions, and bright days filled with possibility. Here's what we have for April through June: 5 core quests that guide us through spring's renewal, 4 companion quests for those who like to wander deeper, side stories each month to connect with the community and earn tokens, and in May, the Festival of the Open Road begins. I'll be reading along with you, sharing my progress, and posting updates throughout this chapter. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss anything. And if you want to join the conversation, drop a comment below telling me, what book are you most excited to read for Chapter 2? I can't wait to hear what you're picking for these prompts. If you're interested in learning more about Once Upon a Year, the full Readathon announcement video is linked somewhere up here. It covers the story of the realm, how the tokens work, the characters we'll meet, and everything you need to know to join us on this journey. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for walking this road with me. The journey continues. Spring is calling. Happy reading, travelers. I'll see you on the road.